Can you all hear me, see my screen and everything? Yes, perfect, amazing. So yes, hi everyone, my name is Lory. I hope you're doing great. So here in Switzerland, it's actually 10 p.m. So if I seem a bit tired or make mistakes, please forgive me, but I will try to do my best. So today I'm here because I want to present you the results of my study, which was published in 2024 in the Journal of Applied Gerontology, and which is entitled Advanced Care Planning, a Story of Trust Within the Family. And this was a joint project with the people listed below from my previous university, so the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. Yes. So I would like to start by providing some background, as this will help you understand why this topic is really important. At the end of life, individuals are often confronted with complex and unique challenges that may threaten their physical and emotional integrity. So it's widely recognized that informal carers have an essential function during this highly sensitive and critical period that precedes death by accompanying the patients through their illness experience and providing vital care and emotional support. And informal caregivers are mainly family members, and it appears that family structure, dynamics, and involvement can strongly influence individuals' experiences as death approaches. Furthermore, relatives who accompany their loved ones during illness often support them in making medical decisions and are sometimes asked to make substitute medical decisions for those who have lost decision-making capacity. So this shows that dying is to a large extent a relational process in which family caregivers represent an important resource. So given the central role of the family in the end-of-life context, it is important to understand how family members are involved in the advanced care planning process, which depends on more than just physician-patient relationships. So why do family relationships matter so much? Older adults tend to have a hierarchical preference for assistance and support from family members in a variety of situations, and they turn to non-family members only when familial sources of support are not available. And in the context of end-of-life situations and decision-making, adult children and spouses, and especially women, are commonly involved in the care of frail older adults. And also, older adults usually prefer and expect family members to make the medical decisions on their behalf in case of mental incapacity. However, some individuals might deviate from this framework in certain circumstances to meet their needs and or those of their loved ones. So for instance, married couples may ignore the highly normative choice of support from their spouse if they do not trust their partners or have a problematic relationships. Thus, although the family appears to be the preferred source of support among older adults, the quality of family relationships also determines the choice of support persons. And in fact, the quality of family and social relationship contributes to the type of health behaviors individuals pursue. So several studies have shown that compared to individuals with tenuous or strained family and friendship ties, individuals with close and supportive relationships are more likely to engage in health-enhancing behavior and consequently more likely to enjoy better health. But how does this relate to advanced care planning, and what is advanced care planning? So ACP. ACP has been defined as a process that includes personal reflection and discussions with relatives and or professionals about values and life goals, as well as future care and treatment preferences, with the possible outcome of designated a healthcare proxy and making an advance directive. Or I think in the US, we call it a living will. So advance directives record patients' treatment preferences and decisions for the possible event of future decision-making incapacity. And ACP and advanced directives help to improve the end-of-life care experience by improving the quality of patient-physician communication, also reducing decisional conflict, increasing preferences for comfort care, and really encouraging the documentation of treatment preferences. Furthermore, the existence of advanced directives is also associated with more out-of-hospital care, an increased focus on comfort care, and it may contribute to reducing overtreatment at the end of life. So in the absence of advanced directives, an adult will be designated to make substitute medical decisions for the incapacitated patients. And appointed or default surrogates are often family members, either through a legal designation by the patient or the judicial system. Family members might experience surrogate medical decision-making as stressful and a burden, especially when they do not know the patient's wishes. Therefore, discussing end-of-life preferences and completing advance directives not only helps to maintain a good quality of life at the end of life, but it also reduces family stress and potential guilt in making an uninformed medical decision. Now, why is trust so important? So, despite this beneficial impact of advanced care planning for the family, adults often approach such planning with hesitation, as thoughts of one's imminent illness and ultimate death are potentially distressing and may trigger denial rather than active planning. However, the availability of comforting and supportive relationships can mitigate distress and encourage positive health behaviors, such as engagement in advanced care planning. And a measure of the quality of family relationships is the level of trust that individuals place in their family members. And indeed, trust is a key element of relationships and is included in most theoretical relational models. Moreover, the literature generally sees trust as one of the three major dimensions of relationship quality, along with commitment and satisfaction. And in addition, the central role of trust in medical relationships has long been acknowledged, and it has been shown that trust can influence a range of important behaviors and attitudes, including patients' willingness to seek care, undergo treatment, disclose sensitive information, adhere to treatment regimens, remain with a doctor, and so on. So, now, what is the goal of this study? The main objectives of this study is to evaluate the importance of older adults' trust in their relatives regarding end-of-life issues for advanced care planning. And more specifically, I try to answer the following question: does trust in relatives play a role in how older adults approach their advanced care planning in Switzerland, and if so, how? And to the best of my knowledge, at least when this study was published, it was the first one that really tried to investigate the importance of trust in relatives for engagement in advanced care planning. So now that we know the objective of the study, we can examine how we proceeded to try to achieve it. So data used in this research comes from a paper and pencil self-completion questionnaire about preferences, knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors towards end-of-life care planning. And this questionnaire was distributed in 2015 as part of the Wave 6 in Switzerland at the end of the regular interview of the Survey of Health, Aging, and Retirement in Europe, so SHARE. What is SHARE? SHARE is a longitudinal, interdisciplinary, and cross-national data infrastructure that includes individual-level information on health, socioeconomic, social, and family networks, and other life circumstances of older persons from 27 European countries and Israel. And Switzerland has been participated in SHARE since the beginning in 2004. So in this study, we only included adults aged 55 years old and older as a representative sample. Originally, we had more than 2,500 respondents that completed the end-of-life questionnaires in 2015. But since we want to do a complete case analysis, we only kept observation with no missing data on all variables selected for the analyze, which at the end resulted in a final analytical sample of 1,911 observations. So looking now at the variables we included in the analyze and starting with the outcome variables, the first variable we are interested in is about end-of-life preference discussions. So respondents were first asked in the questionnaire whether they had already discussed their end-of-life wishes with someone. Then the concept of advance directives was explained to them, and they were asked if they had already heard of advance directives before. So we called it advance directives awareness. Then, additionally, they were asked whether they had designated a healthcare proxy, which is someone who will make decisions for them in the event of need. And they were also asked whether they had completed an advance directives, and if not, whether they would consider completing one in the future. And respondents who reported either having designated the healthcare proxy, having completed an advance directives, or that are considering completing one in the future were classified as approving advance directives. Finally, respondents were also asked if applicable, with whom they discussed their end-of-life preferences and their advance directives, and whom they had designated as their healthcare proxy. Now, for the independent variable of or research, it concerns the level of trust in relatives regarding end-of-life issues. And more specifically, respondents were asked the following question. While some people fully trust certain persons or institutions, other people are apprehensive of them. With regard to end-of-life issues, to what degree do you trust your relatives? So they were asked to rate their level of trust on a 4-point Likert scales, ranging from completely to not at all. And responses to these questions were dichotomized into somewhat, a little, and not at all, coded as 0 and referred to as absence of or limited trust in relatives, and completely coded as 1 and referred to as complete trust in relatives. Then we included a bunch of control variables that are mainly sociodemographic characteristics, such as the gender, the age, the education level, whether the person is living in a partner with on the same household, the number of children alive, and how they are able to make ends meet. Also the type of place of residence and the linguistic regions. And in addition, respondents' health was measured through self-reported limitation in basic and instrumental activities of daily living and self-rated health status. For the statistical analysis, we use multivariable logistic regression models to explore the associations of end-of-life discussion, advance directives awareness, approval and completion, and healthcare proxy designation with trust in relatives regarding end-of-life issues, including the respondent's sociodemographic characteristic as control variables. And the average partial effects were calculated to facilitate the interpretation of the logistic regression estimates. And also estimated standard errors account for clustering at the household level, and this really corrects for potential unobserved dependencies between two observations coming from the same household. So now let's have a look at the results. So first, this shows simply the weighted proportions of the characteristics of respondents included in the final analytical sample. And focusing first on ACP characteristics, we see that approximately 50% of respondents had already discussed their end-of-life preferences with someone, and that a large majority of our respondents were aware of the existence of advance directives when the question was asked, and also a large majority of them, among 80%, said that they considered completing an advance directive in the future or already had one or had designated the healthcare proxy, which is the advance directives approval. And then what is interesting is when we look at the actual actions that were taken, we see that only a minority of respondents, only 20% of them, had already completed an advance directive, actually. And only 16% of them had designated the healthcare proxy, which is really lower than the awareness rate and the approval rates. And now concerning the family relationship qualities, we see that a large majority of our respondents, approximately 80%, stated to have complete trust in their relatives regarding end-of-life issues. And the rest are simply the control variables and the proportions of women, men, and age groups. So now this figure displays the weighted percentage of respondents' ACP outcomes by level of trust in their relatives, along with the 95% confidence interval. And what we see is that the proportion of respondents who discussed their end-of-life preferences, were aware of the existence of advance directives, approved them, had completed them, and designated a healthcare proxy, were systematically and significantly higher among respondents with complete trust in relatives regarding end-of-life issues than among respondents with absence of or limited trust in relatives. So now the first column of this table presents the estimate of the partial association of sociodemographic, family, geographic, and health characteristics with complete trust in relatives regarding end-of-life issues. So what we observed is that compared to men, women were 4 percentage point more likely to display complete trust in their relatives regarding end-of-life issues. Complete trust in relatives was also positively associated with a high level of education, with living with a partner in the same household, and having living children. Then compared to German-speaking respondents, respondents with a French or Italian-speaking background were less likely to display full trust in their relatives regarding end-of-life issues. Maybe I should precise that in Switzerland we have 4 national languages, but 3 main parts of Switzerland where you either speak German, French, or Italian. So that's why we're also looking at these regions. Finally, we see that respondents with at least one limitation in basic activities of daily living also had lower levels of trust in relatives with regard to end-of-life issues. Then, column 2 to 6 display the estimated average partial effects based on multivariable logistic regression model for having had the discussions of end-of-life preferences, advanced directives awareness, approval and completion, and healthcare proxy designation on complete trust in relatives regarding end-of-life issues, controlling for the variables, the socio-demographic variables. So we can see clearly here that complete trust in relatives with regard to end-of-life issues is positively associated with all of the 5 outcomes. So having had discussion, advanced directives awareness, approval, completion, and healthcare proxy designation again. And finally, this last figure showed the weighted proportions of types of individuals with whom respondents discussed their wishes for the end of life, spoke about their advanced directives, and who they designated as their healthcare proxy, along with the 95% confidence interval. And here, what we observe is that respondents mainly selected their spouse or partner and also their children as partners for their discussions about the end of life and their advanced directives, and also as a designated healthcare proxy, which is consistent with what we were discussing in the introduction. So now that we have seen all of this, we can discuss a bit the results, and we can start with the end-of-life preference discussion. So this study has shown that although most respondents completely trusted their relatives with regard to end-of-life issues, only about half of them had already had discussions of their end-of-life preferences with another person. So this is consistent with other studies which show that most older adults tend not to discuss preferences for their long-term care, even with trusted others. And this is because there are many barriers to discussing advanced care planning. And the main one is probably the prospect of one's death, that is really acting as a huge barrier, because death is a very difficult and very emotionally charged topic to address, and it may trigger a lot of negative feelings like anxiety, fear, discomfort, sadness, and grief. Another frequent barrier to end-of-life discussions is a previous breakdown of family relationships or a lack of close family altogether. And this is consistent with this statement. The results that we have seen show that the proportions of individuals who have discussed their end-of-life preferences is higher among respondents who trust their family completely than among those who do not. And additionally, the findings also show that when a discussion about end-of-life preferences took place, it usually involved the respondents' partners and/or children. Hence, it really seems that the family still appear to be a privileged partner for sensitive discussion about older adults' end-of-life preferences. And since discussing end-of-life preferences is often highly emotional and unsettling and really require a trusting environment, not everybody represents a suitable discussion partner for such conversations. So some individuals prefer to talk about their end of life with professionals and persons who are not personally affected by the matter, such as healthcare providers, while some other individuals prefer to engage in end of life discussions with more intimate communication partners, such as close relatives who have known them for some time and who tend to be more readily available and maybe understand them better. Hence, end-of-life discussions appear to be sensitive to the functioning of families and can be really facilitated when family relationships are marked by open communication and sharing of each other's fears and feelings. And this generally requires a high level of trust. Now, turning to advanced directives awareness, our study showed that while most respondents were aware of the existence of advanced directives, the rates of awareness were even higher among persons who stated to completely trust their relatives. So this result suggests that a trusted family may be involved in raising awareness of advanced directives among older adults. And indeed, it has been shown that many individuals learn about advanced directives from family, friends, personal attorneys, and media, while fewer individuals learn about it from healthcare providers. And in our study, the potential role of the family in advanced directives awareness is further supported by the close link between advanced directives awareness and end-of-life discussions. Specifically, respondents who had a discussion about their end-of-life preferences were also more likely to have heard about advanced directives. Since most respondents discuss their end-of-life preferences with their close relatives, advanced directives may have been a topic raised by their discussion partners, who may therefore have contributed to increasing advanced directive awareness among respondents. Now, looking at advanced directives approval and completion, we have seen that complete trust in relative was associated with higher approval and completion rates for advanced directives. And this is because social relationship can affect health, either by promoting a sense of meaning or coherence that enhances health by fostering health-promoting behaviors, such as proper sleep, exercise, adherence to medical regimens, or getting needed medical care. Hence, we might expect that persons with high-quality relationships will be more motivated to engage in advanced directives because their close relatives encourage them to do so, and because they know that it may help to protect their loved ones from making difficult decisions regarding end-of-life care as a potential future healthcare proxy. However, something that is also interesting to note is that we may have also expected the complete opposite result. We might have thought, okay, respondents with more trust in their family may be less likely to have advanced directives. So for instance, married couples might prefer to sidestep formal advanced directives or living will because they believe that their spouse knows their medical care preference and will make the appropriate medical decisions on their behalf if required. And in this context, we could have expected that complete trust in relatives decreased the chance of having an advanced directives, and contrarily, absence of or limited trust increased chances, as the patients may want full control over their end-of-life decisions. But this is not what we observed in this study. And I think one of the main reasons is because we know, and it has been largely documented, that many individuals complete advanced directive really because they don't want to be a burden on their family. So individuals who fully trust and care about their loved ones may want to protect them from the pain of having to make such difficult decisions about stopping or prolonging treatment and from potential family conflict if there is family disagreement about the appropriate care. So advanced directives really help to prevent family guilt over treatment decisions and reduce family stress associated with honoring patient wishes in the end-of-life decision-making. Hence, the completion of advanced directives may really reflect a desire to facilitate decision-making for the family in case of incapacity and a wish not to leave relatives alone during these possibly ethically and morally challenging decision-making situations at the end of life. And in line with this argument, we show that if respondents have completed an advanced directive, they mainly discuss about it with their partners and or children. Now, looking at the designation of healthcare proxy, in our data, we have seen that the share of respondents who designated the healthcare proxy was higher among those who completely trusted their relatives than among those who did not. And in addition, we saw that most designated healthcare proxy were close relatives, such as the partner and children. We also found a positive partial association between complete trust in one's relative and the designation of a healthcare proxy. So older adults who feel that they can trust family members are more likely to appoint them as healthcare proxies than those who do not trust their relatives. Hence, it seems that appointing a family member as a healthcare proxy is really contingent on trust in relatives. And also, older adults mainly select spouses and members of the younger generation as potential surrogate decision makers, and they turn to other relatives and non-relatives only when these close family members are not available. So individuals seems to name the person that is perceived to best listen to them and to best represent their views in the end-of-life decision-making process as their healthcare proxy. And the absence of or limited trust in relatives regarding end-of-life issues may indicate poor family relationships that could really discourage the appointment of a healthcare proxy, which would usually be a family member. Lastly, we have seen that some socio-demographic and cultural or regional characteristics could also be associated with more or less level of trust in relatives. So more specifically, we observed that men, individuals with low education levels, and individuals living in French and Italian-speaking regions tend to have less trust in their relatives regarding end-of-life issues, and they also tend to have less favorable approach toward advanced care planning. And here are some potential explanations for these patterns. So focusing on women, it has been widely discussed that women usually care more about building and maintaining relationships than men and are more likely to be involved in the family care. So they usually express a greater sense of responsibility toward family members and they devote more time to caregiving. Women are also more open to engaging in all topics of death and dying, and they are less likely to deny life's problems. Additionally, in similar assessments of illness and injury, women are more likely than men to seek care or assistance, which might explain their higher engagement in advanced care planning. Similarly, regarding education level, a successful professional experience is likely to make individuals more prone to trusting each other. So schooling provides an environment with opportunities for socialization that can engender positive attitude toward people in general. And schooling not only helps to improve communication and social skills, but it also helps to increase the understanding and awareness of more scientific topics. So, for instance, newspaper and magazines are more likely to be used regularly by people with higher levels of education, and more educated people are more likely to read about health than less educated people. Following this, more educated people may be more aware and willing to engage in advanced care planning and have less difficulty communicating their end-of-life care that they would like to receive compared to less educated people. Of course, these are some hypotheses, but there might be more complex mechanisms that may link individual characteristics with trust in relatives and approach toward advanced care planning. And this would need a bit more further research using more detailed measurements. So now we can have a quick look at what are some potential limitations of this study. So it's good to note that one limitation that we thought of at first was related to missing responses, because we observed that older adults, individuals with low education level, and those in poor health were slightly more likely to avoid some questions. But the non-response rates in these groups remained on average below 10%, so it seemed unlikely that sample selection related to missing responses is driving the results. A second limitation is related to the fact that some respondents may declare not to trust their relative because they simply don't have relatives. But again, as our model adjusted for family structures, so we had this control variable as being partner or having living children, the family composition is unlikely to play a major role in the association between trust in relatives and approach toward advanced care planning. A third limitation is the fact that trust in relatives might not be the best or the only proxy variable of the quality of family relationships. So while it's true that the low level of trust is often a reflection of a problematic relationship, it's also completely possible for two individuals of the same family to trust each other without having necessarily a very close relationship. And this would overestimate the importance of good family relationships in engaging in advanced care planning. And finally, it's important to note that we did not directly measure the role of relatives in respondents' advanced care planning behaviors. So while trust in relatives was positively associated with engagement in the advanced care planning process, this does not necessarily imply that the family members actively moderated potential stress associated with advanced care planning or directly encouraged older adults to engage in ACP. So now we can look at what are the public health implications and we can conclude this study. So we have seen in this study that trust in relatives regarding end-of-life issues correlated in how older adults plan their end-of-life care. So a higher level of trust in relatives regarding end-of-life issues is linked to a more positive attitude and more proactive behavior toward advanced care planning. So, while previous research has shown that close and trusting relationships usually increase the likelihood of engaging in health enhancing behaviors, we add to this literature by showing that this relationship also holds true for proactive advanced care planning. Hence, it seems that the family is really shown to be essential at the end of life and for end of life care. So while tools such as advanced directives aim to guarantee individuals' autonomy and self-determination in all circumstances, the awareness, approval, and the use of advanced directives seem to remain strongly linked to individuals' family contexts. Therefore, healthcare providers involved in advanced care planning should offer, of course, with the patient's consent, to include family members in the different stage of the process. And finally, population-wide information and indication on end-of-life situations is crucial, given the substantial likelihood that individuals will find themselves involved as patients or family members navigating end-of-life issues and decisions. So here are some references. If you want the complete list of it, I strongly invite you to go check the paper. So thank you everyone for your attention. And now if you have any questions or any comments, I'm really happy to discuss it.
Yes. Does anyone have some questions for I'll kick it off. Hopefully they're keying it in. I always hope. What advice do you have for families where that trust is limited or relationships are strained, but they need that advanced care planning?
So I think it's really a tough question because it really depends on the family context. If the family context is tough, but if there is still a potential for open communications, I think we can solve a lot of issues with just starting a conversation and starting to communicate. And it can also be done with a doctor or with a professional if it seems really difficult at the beginning. But of course, in some contexts, it's really some families' ties are really too broken, and in that case I wouldn't necessarily say you have to go to your family if it's problematic. Sometimes it's just problematic and we accept it, and there might be other possibilities. You can also appoint someone like your friend, a close friend, or someone that you trust that is not necessarily related, just it can be someone that you know that is not related to your family. And again, you can also just do the documents by yourself and give it to your doctor. So there's other options to really do advanced care planning, even if the family relationships are not always the best. But of course, in an ideal scenario, I would start by trying to communicate.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, some of those relationships get broken, and then it's probably not going to be repaired through this, but
Exactly.
there's
Yeah.
hope. Um, so what do you feel? So how does the role of the oldest daughter, eh, how does that really influence the advanced care planning process? Especially where like culture plays into place.
Yeah, this is actually interesting because it's also something that I think is important because we have seen this role of women, and I think it's something that is really natural and linked to history and the context and the culture. I would like to say that I would really think and prefer that all families or all children would be involved in the same way, because sometimes even as women it can feel really, you can feel like you have a lot of responsibilities, because usually women are the ones that share more their feelings and take more care of the people that are in need. So just for this, I think that raising awareness also for men would be very important, because it's also the case that we don't necessarily always have a woman that is available or a daughter in the family. But it's true that when a daughter is available, just I think because of culture and how it goes, there is usually it's usually the person that will feel naturally more responsible, because we have this tendency of showing more affections and being there more for other people. So I think, and also maybe there is a better or an easier understanding of what is advanced care planning and end of life. If I think in my family, for instance, it's true that my mother, for instance, she had, I think, a bit an easier time to talk about it with me because we just connect a bit more with my mother. But I imagine that, for instance, if it's the case of a man, it's completely also great and would be amazing if they can communicate their feelings and their preferences with the son. So I wouldn't necessarily say you have to talk to your daughter or whatever. I think the most important is just to talk to someone that you trust. It can be your son, your daughters, your cousin, whatever. But it's true that culturally there is this tendency of having more women involved in the process.
See.
Mm.
So, see, just, oh, I didn't have the, um, hmm, let's see here. I'm just looking at what are some of these common barriers that families run into when trying to discuss the advanced care planning. I know you mentioned things
Yeah.
in the presentation, but what are the main ones?
I think main one is maybe a lack of communication again in a lot of families, or at least a lack of communications on very heavy topics. And this is of course not a topic that anyone is happy to discuss about. And I think it can really comes from both sides. I had some family members that really didn't want to talk about their potential end of life, but also on the side of the daughter, the son, the partner, it can be really difficult because you want to deny, avoid, think it will never happen. And a general, I think it can also be the case that if you don't really feel that you're very well listened to or very well understand, for instance, it's the case that in some relationships, the one of the person doesn't really want to talk about this with their partner because they know that the partner is not going to agree on some of the decisions, or they're afraid that the partners, I don't know, if your decision is to stop too harsh medicals. I don't know how to say this, but at the end of life, if you want to have more care rather than forcing to stay alive even if you're completely unconscious or this kind of stuff, it can be really hard to tell your partners and that this is your decision, or you think the person is never going to accept. So I think these are also some barriers of feeling that maybe you're not completely understand by your partners, or that they will, because they love you, they will want you to stay as more as possible. Yeah.
I want you to stay alive. I mean, go figure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But no, it's a fact of
yeah.
things to be considering.
Mhm.
Let's see here, Mr. Norman or Angela.
Well, thank you so much, Lori. What I was really impressed by in this presentation, honestly, was just something that I shared with you over email when you shared this with me. The the density and volume of research insights that we got just by looking at the slides and listening to you and affirming, for us, at least for me, someone that has been deep into this for years now, some things just float up at the top because they make so much sense, especially with data. But
Mhm.
sometimes it's, yeah, of course I knew that.
Yeah.
That's common sense.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you take out all the data, all the research insights, and you just leave the insight, you're kind of like, yeah, of course.
Mhm.
It's easy for me to agree to what I'm seeing and hearing in the presentation. So thank
Mhm.
you so much for offering this up. I'm sure that your team has um, worked on this together to produce so many facts and figures, so much data to drive this forward. But honestly, sometimes for me, it was just clear statements
Yeah.
of the discussion results that are kind of like, oh, just those statements alone, I can strip away all the things that can be confusing for some people and just leave
Mhm.
it behind, and I would still believe this.
Yeah, and sometimes research is about just showing with data something that everyone already suspects, but having some science behind is also sometimes the power of just research.
Yeah, and it's so reassuring because it's kind of like, yeah, deep inside our hearts, we believe this. This is an ideal scenario
Yeah.
for active family involvement to happen. These are very ideal. Sometimes people don't have families, like you said. And how can they? They can reach out to their loved ones. But something that I would like to share that could really help, whether or not you have a family, is to join a community. And you guys probably have Angela and Kim are probably like, oh my God, another plug-in for the community membership. But it's true because there's, on one hand, people that are close to us and we love and we trust them and we create these plans for future care. And then on the other hand, what if as a society we can have a preview, a view of all these families? What actually helps them in a view of, wow, these are all the families that are there. And so that's why I'm so happy to share that number one, Lory is in the community. And you can definitely reach out to her, ask her a few things, learn a little bit, and what really makes me happy now that Lory is here, because of Lory's research, it built the community from my mind. It's the fact that her work will make so much of a difference and she will see it over time within this community. People actually learning about proactive family involvement, learning what trust means at the family level. That's so important. And I'm just so happy that, okay, I'm sharing this link. Hope you guys like join and like get to work with Lory and learn more about what she does. But to be honest, it's, just to enjoy the fact that there are so many like-minded people that are coming together to help each other live well with a terminal illness. And I can't thank Lory enough for her work, because it spelled out the creation of something new like this community. And I'm just so grateful that she, you know, at 10 p.m. at night in Switzerland, spending time with us to share about her work, just because it's that important. 2024 was such an awesome year because number one, I got to discover Lory's research, but number two, proactive involvement by eldest daughters boomed last year so much it became a syndrome. 2024 was the year when someone finally said, "Yep, there are many eldest daughters now helping their families come to terms and live well with a terminal illness." It's now a thing. And so that's why it's no longer alien to actually be talking about eldest daughters as proactive family leaders or women that are actually coming together and helping each other out because of this real phenomenon. So thank you so much, Lory. I am so glad you're in the community because now I can definitely say Lory's in the community. We can all, of course, always ask her to help out and see what she can do. But also, it's just the fact that we're here. We're here. We're helping each other out. We're learning as we go, and hopefully, we get to share the pain points and frustrations of all of this together, interdependently, as a whole family matter. So thank you so much, Lory.
It was
Uh,
a pleasure. Thank
thank you
you.
again, Angela and Kim, for helping us co-organize for the entire day